My understanding is that the DNA tends to show that there is a reasonably close relationship between Canaanites and Israelites, which isn't surprising.
For thousands of years, the origins of the Canaanites were debated until ancient DNA exposed a truth hidden beneath ruins and burial sites. For centuries, the Canaanites have been one of the most debated populations in the ancient world, featured in biblical narratives, referenced in Egyptian records, yet mysteriously disappearing from history without a clear explanation. Today, advances in ancient DNA analysis are bringing their story back to life. Recently sequenced genomes from long-buried Canaanite individuals reveal where they came from, who they mixed with, and how their genetic legacy survived far longer than historians ever believed. This discovery is finally closing a chapter that remained open for more than 3,000 years. Stay with me, because the deeper we go into this discovery, the more it reshapes everything we thought we understood about ancient people, migrations, and the biblical past, so follow along as we uncover the truth written in their DNA. Who were the Canaanites? The Canaanites were far more impressive than most people realize. Between 4,500 and 3,000 years ago, they built thriving cities and bustling trade centers in the region we now call Lebanon, Syria, Israel, Palestine, and Jordan. While the Egyptians were constructing magnificent pyramids and the Mesopotamians were raising towering ziggurats, the Canaanites were developing their own unique culture right between these two powerful civilizations. These people were master traders and skilled craftsmen. They established major city-states along the Mediterranean coast, including the famous port city of Sidon. Their ships sailed across the Mediterranean Sea, carrying precious goods and spreading their influence to distant lands. The Canaanites created networks of commerce that connected different cultures and brought wealth flowing into their coastal cities. But here's what makes them truly legendary. The Canaanites gave the world something we use every single day. They developed one of the first alphabetic writing systems, which eventually evolved into the alphabet you're reading right now. The Proto-Canaanite script emerged sometime between 1900 and 1700 BC, transforming Egyptian hieroglyphic symbols into a simpler system. This revolutionary invention would later spread to the Greeks, then to the Romans, and ultimately become the foundation for most modern alphabets worldwide. The biblical mystery. The Canaanites appear multiple times throughout the Old Testament, but their story in these ancient texts is troubling. According to biblical accounts, after the Israelites escaped from Egypt, God commanded them to conquer the land of Canaan and destroy its inhabitants. The Book of Numbers specifically describes where the Canaanites lived, saying they dwelt by the sea and along the banks of the Jordan River. These biblical passages created a historical puzzle that haunted researchers for generations. If the ancient texts were accurate, the Canaanites should have been completely wiped out during these violent conflicts. The Bible suggests that Canaanite cities were destroyed and their people eliminated, leaving nothing behind but ruins and memories. For centuries, scholars wondered whether these accounts reflected actual historical events or served other purposes. The mystery deepened because the Canaanites themselves left very few written records. Unlike the Egyptians with their elaborate hieroglyphic texts or the Mesopotamians with their extensive cuneiform tablets, the Canaanites didn't preserve detailed accounts of their own civilization. We know about them primarily through mentions in Egyptian texts, occasional Greek references, and biblical passages. This scarcity of direct evidence made it nearly impossible to verify what really happened to them. Did they truly disappear in ancient warfare? Or did something else occur? The archaeological puzzle. For decades, archaeologists working in the Middle East noticed something strange. While the Bible described the complete destruction of Canaanite cities, the physical evidence told a different story. Excavation sites throughout Lebanon, Israel, and the surrounding territories revealed that many Canaanite settlements showed continuous occupation rather than sudden abandonment. The layers of earth didn't support the idea of massive, devastating destruction. Archaeological teams uncovered pottery, tools, building foundations, and everyday objects that suggested life in these ancient cities continued relatively undisturbed for long periods. The artifacts showed cultural evolution and change over time, not the abrupt halt you'd expect from total annihilation. Cities like Sidon, which had been major Canaanite centers, contained evidence of people living there generation after generation. This created a fascinating contradiction between written accounts and physical evidence. Archaeologists found themselves caught between ancient texts describing warfare and destruction, and tangible remains suggesting continuity and survival. The question gnawed at researchers. How could a civilization supposedly destroyed by war leave behind such clear signs of ongoing occupation? The answer would remain hidden until modern science developed the tools to look beyond pottery shards and building stones to examine the very genetic blueprint of ancient peoples themselves. The DNA breakthrough. Everything changed in 2017 when an international team of geneticists published groundbreaking research in the American Journal of Human Genetics Scientists from the Wellcome Trust Sanger Institute, working alongside researchers from Cambridge University and Harvard University, achieved something remarkable. They successfully sequenced complete genomes from 5 Canaanite individuals who lived approximately 3,700 years ago in the ancient city of Sidon, located in modern-day Lebanon. This achievement represented a massive scientific victory. Extracting usable DNA from bones buried for thousands of years in a hot Mediterranean climate typically proves extremely difficult. Heat and humidity rapidly degrade genetic material, turning it into fragments too small to analyze. Most ancient DNA studies focus on specimens from cold northern climates, where low temperatures help preserve biological molecules. The Mediterranean region, with its warm temperatures and moisture, creates one of the worst possible environments for DNA preservation. The research team, led by geneticist Mark Haber, overcame these daunting challenges through clever technique. They targeted a specific part of the skull called the petrous bone, the densest bone in the human body, located behind the ear and protecting the inner ear structures. This incredibly tough bone acts like a natural vault, shielding DNA from environmental damage far better than any other skeletal element. Scientists discovered they could extract up to 100 times more DNA from petrous bones compared to other bones, or even teeth. This breakthrough method opened doors for studying ancient populations in regions previously considered too challenging for genetic research. Extracting the impossible. The process of recovering ancient DNA from these 3,700-year-old Canaanite remains required painstaking precision and specialized techniques. First, researchers carefully selected petrous bones from 5 different individuals buried at the Sidon archaeological site. These bones had survived millennia underground despite Lebanon's challenging preservation conditions. The team worked in specially controlled laboratory environments to prevent any modern contamination from corrupting their precious samples. Scientists ground the petrous bones into extremely fine powder, then treated this powder with chemical solutions designed to release trapped DNA molecules. They focused specifically on the cochlea region, the spiral-shaped inner ear structure surrounded by the densest part of the petrous bone. This area consistently yields the highest concentrations of preserved genetic material. The extraction process generated millions of DNA fragments, which then needed to be carefully sequenced using high-powered Illumina machines. Getting usable genetic information from such ancient material comes with unique complications. Ancient DNA suffers from degradation over time, breaking into shorter and shorter pieces. The molecules also accumulate specific types of damage, including a characteristic pattern where cytosine bases convert to thymine. Researchers actually look for these damage patterns as proof that DNA truly comes from ancient sources rather than modern contamination. The team had to verify that the genetic sequences they obtained were genuinely Canaanite by checking for these telltale signs of age. They also compared their samples against negative controls to ensure no modern human DNA had accidentally mixed in during laboratory handling. The entire process demanded months of meticulous work and sophisticated analysis. Who were they genetically? Once the scientists successfully extracted and sequenced the Canaanite genomes, they faced their next challenge: figuring out where these ancient people actually came from. The genetic data revealed a fascinating origin story. The Canaanites weren't a single homogeneous population that had always lived in the Levant. Instead, they represented a unique mixture of two distinct ancestral groups who came together thousands of years ago. About half of the Canaanite genetic ancestry traced back to local farming populations who had settled in the Levantine region roughly 10,000 years ago. These were the original Neolithic farmers who had transitioned from hunting and gathering to agriculture. They established permanent villages, domesticated plants and animals, and built the foundation for settled civilization in the area. Their genetic legacy ran deep in the land. The other half of Canaanite ancestry proved more surprising. It connected to populations from much farther away, specifically to groups identified from skeletal remains found in Iran and the Caucasus Mountains, located about 750 miles to the northeast. Archaeological evidence had previously puzzled researchers because distinctive red and black pottery found at Canaanite sites closely resembled ceramics from the Caucasus region. Additionally, many Canaanite names derived from Hurrian, a non-Semitic language originating in the Caucasus. The DNA evidence finally explained these mysterious connections. Significant numbers of people from the Caucasus region migrated into the Levant around 5,000 years ago, right at the start of the Bronze Age. These eastern migrants mixed with the local Neolithic population, and from this blending of peoples, the distinctive Canaanite culture emerged. The genetic analysis revealed that the Canaanites were children of two worlds, rooted in local tradition but infused with distant influences. The modern connection. After establishing who the ancient Canaanites were, researchers turned to an even more intriguing question: do their descendants still exist today? The scientific team sequenced the complete genomes of 99 people currently living in Lebanon. Then they compared this modern Lebanese genetic data against the ancient Canaanite genomes from Sidon. The results were absolutely stunning. The analysis revealed that more than 90% of modern Lebanese genetic ancestry comes directly from the ancient Canaanites. This represents an extraordinarily high level of genetic continuity. The Canaanites didn't vanish at all. They survived, thrived, and passed down their genetic heritage through countless generations spanning nearly 4 millennia. The remaining 10% of Lebanese ancestry traces to Eurasian steppe populations who mixed with the Canaanite population sometime between 3,800 and 2,200 years ago, during a period when various empires conquered the region. This degree of genetic preservation is remarkable given the tumultuous history of the Levant. Over the past several thousand years, this crossroads region witnessed countless invasions, migrations, and power shifts. Ancient Egyptians, Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, Greeks, Romans, Arabs, Crusaders, Ottomans, and many others swept through the area, each leaving their mark. Despite all this upheaval, the fundamental genetic character of the population remained surprisingly stable. Geneticist Chris Tyler Smith noted that the Levant actually showed more genetic continuity than places like England, where massive population replacements occurred during the same time period. The Canaanite people adapted, absorbed new influences, and persisted through every storm of history while maintaining their essential identity beyond Lebanon. The genetic legacy of the Canaanites extends far beyond modern Lebanon's borders. Researchers conducting related studies found Canaanite-related ancestry spread throughout the broader Levantine region. Populations in Jordan, Syria, Palestine, and Israel all carry significant genetic connections to these Bronze Age people. The ancient Canaanite population wasn't confined to coastal cities. Their genetic signature appears in both urban centers along the Mediterranean shore and inland settlements. This widespread genetic presence makes perfect sense when considering Canaanite history and culture. The Canaanites later became known by another name that's more familiar to many people, the Phoenicians as Phoenicians, They established colonies and trading posts throughout the Mediterranean world. Their ships reached as far west as Spain and North Africa, where they founded the powerful city of Carthage. Through their extensive maritime networks, Phoenician traders spread not only goods, but also people and genes. The Canaanite-Phoenician cultural influence touched civilizations across the ancient world. Their revolutionary alphabet spread first to neighboring peoples. Israelites, Philistines, Moabites, and Ammonites all adopted it. Then Aramaic-speaking tribes to the north embraced the script, and as Aramaic became the administrative language of successive empires, the alphabet dispersed throughout the Near East. Meanwhile, Phoenician merchants traveling westward introduced their writing system to the Greeks, who adapted it for their own language and eventually passed it to the Etruscans and Romans. Today, billions of people use writing systems descended from that Canaanite innovation. Even the Arabic script that later developed can trace its lineage back through various evolutionary stages to those first alphabetic letters created in ancient Canaan. The Petrus Bone Revolution. The successful extraction of Canaanite DNA marked a pivotal moment for the entire field of ancient genetics, before researchers discovered the exceptional properties of the Petrus bone. Studying ancient populations in warm climates seemed nearly impossible. Scientists had mostly resigned themselves to working with specimens from cold regions like Northern Europe, where low temperatures naturally preserve biological material. Hot environments like the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and Africa remained frustrating blank spots on the ancient DNA map. The Petrus bone changed everything. This small, pyramid-shaped piece of the skull, measuring just a few centimeters, protects the delicate structures of the inner ear. It develops as the densest bone in the entire human skeleton, with a tightly packed internal structure. This exceptional density acts as a remarkable shield, protecting DNA molecules from heat, moisture, and bacterial degradation that destroy genetic material in other bones. When the rest of a skeleton crumbles into dust, the Petrus bone often remains intact. Geneticist David Reich, who pioneered many ancient DNA techniques, explained that bone powder taken from the Petrus bone yields on average up to 100 times more usable DNA than powder from softer bones. Since the 2015 discovery of this rich DNA source, researchers have successfully recovered genetic material from ancient people in regions previously thought impossible. African populations, Middle Eastern groups, Pacific Islanders, and Southeast Asian peoples have all yielded their genetic secrets through Petrus bone analysis. The Canaanite study demonstrated that even in the challenging Lebanese climate, with its combination of heat and humidity, scientists could still extract complete genomes from people who died nearly 4,000 years ago. This breakthrough opened vast new territories for exploring human history through DNA. What the DNA cannot tell us. While the genetic evidence provides fascinating insights, it also has important limitations. The DNA study definitively shows that Canaanite genes survived, and that modern Lebanese people are primarily descended from these ancient populations. However, genes alone cannot fully answer questions about ancient conflicts and cultural relationships. As geneticist Chris Tyler Smith carefully explained, you can have genetically similar or even identical populations that are culturally very different and hostile toward each other. Think about it this way: genetic similarity doesn't prevent conflict. Throughout history, closely related groups have fought bitter wars. The DNA evidence shows that whatever happened between the Israelites and Canaanites in ancient times, enough Canaanites survived to pass down their genes through countless generations. But this doesn't tell us exactly what occurred. There may well have been battles, territorial disputes, and violence as biblical texts describe. Such conflicts simply didn't result in the complete elimination of the Canaanite population. Geneticist Johannes Krause from the Max Planck Institute noted that if one genetically similar population conquers another, it probably wouldn't leave traces that ancient DNA studies could easily detect. Military conflicts, power struggles, and cultural clashes don't always show up clearly in genetic data. The biblical accounts might describe real historical events from the perspective of one group, while the genetic evidence demonstrates the survival of the other group. Both things could be true simultaneously. The DNA gives us one piece of a complex historical puzzle, but it doesn't solve every mystery about what life was really like in ancient Canaan, or exactly what events transpired between different populations sharing that land. Rewriting history. The 2017 DNA study fundamentally changed how historians and archaeologists think about ancient populations. For decades, scholars had operated under the assumption that ancient writings like the Bible, when they described the complete destruction of a people, probably reflected historical reality. The conventional wisdom held that ancient conquests and warfare frequently resulted in total annihilation. After all, numerous ancient civilizations did disappear without obvious descendants. The Canaanite genetic evidence forced a major reconsideration of these assumptions. Populations can survive and persist even through periods of tremendous upheaval and conflict. Ancient accounts of destruction might describe real battles and genuine suffering, but they don't necessarily mean complete extinction. The research demonstrated that genetic continuity can exist alongside cultural transformation. Languages, religions, political systems, and identities can all shift dramatically, while the underlying population remains essentially the same. This realization has profound implications. If the Canaanites survived despite biblical accounts of their destruction, what about other ancient peoples described as vanquished or extinct? Could more supposedly lost civilizations still have living descendants we haven't identified yet? The study opened up exciting new possibilities for investigating ancient questions through modern genetic techniques. Researcher Israel Carmel expressed hope to soon expand these findings by collecting DNA from remains of other groups mentioned in biblical and historical texts: Judeans, Moabites, Ammonites, and others. Each new genome sequenced adds another piece to the vast puzzle of human history and migration. The broader implications. Beyond solving the mystery of what happened to the Canaanites, this research illuminates bigger truths about human history and ancestry. First, it demonstrates that populations are remarkably resilient. People find ways to survive, adapt, and continue their lineages even through catastrophic events. Wars, famines, diseases, and disasters may devastate societies, but they rarely erase populations completely. Human beings possess an extraordinary capacity to endure and recover. Second, the study highlights how complex human ancestry truly is. The Canaanites themselves emerged from a mixture of local Neolithic farmers and migrants from the Caucasus region. Modern Lebanese people carry Canaanite ancestry mixed with later Eurasian influences. Looking back far enough, everyone's genetic heritage becomes a tapestry woven from many different threads. Pure ancestral lines rarely exist. Instead, we find constant mixing, migration, and blending of populations throughout human history. Third, this research shows why genetic studies matter for understanding our past. Written records provide one perspective, archaeological evidence offers another, and now ancient DNA adds a third dimension. These different sources of information don't always agree, but by combining them, we build richer, more accurate pictures of ancient civilizations. The Canaanite example perfectly illustrates how genetics can resolve long-standing historical debates and reveal surprises that other methods miss. Every ancient genome sequence brings us closer to understanding the epic story of human migration, survival, and connection across millennia. The people we think of as lost or vanished may actually walk among us today, their ancient genes still flowing through modern populations in ways we're only beginning to discover. So the great mystery of the biblical Canaanites has finally been solved. They didn't disappear into the mists of history. Instead, their genetic legacy lives on in millions of people today, particularly in Lebanon and across the broader Middle Eastern region. The ancient civilization that gave us the alphabet and built thriving Bronze Age cities continues in the DNA of their descendants. Modern science has written a new ending to an ancient story, one of survival, continuity, and resilience. What do you think about this discovery? Does it change how you view ancient history? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating stories where science meets history.